Welcome to Sharing My Truth with Mel and Suzie, the uncensored version, where we bear it all.
We do.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Sharing My Truth Pod is so excited to partner with Vibrator.com, where the A in vibrator is the number 8. This is an extremely exclusive code where no other podcast has it. If you go to Vibrator.com right now, use the code MS15, that's MS15 at Vibrator.com. You can now get 15% off anything in store. That's any sex toys for you, your partner, your neighbor. We don't judge. Get it now. Go to the link in our bio, put in the code, and get jiggy with it.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome back to Sharing My Truth. I'm Mel, and this is Suzie. Hello, darling. How are you today?
Hello, babes. I am excellent. I'm so happy to be here with you today. I'll be honest. I love you.
Me too. The feeling is completely mutual.
Oh, thank you, love.
So, what are we talking about?
Oh, God. We have an actually pretty big topic today.
Mm-hmm.
You want to know what that is?
Yeah, go for it.
It's the act of pregnancy.
The act. I love that. The act of pregnancy.
And then, comes next is the second act,
Like the act.
which is birth. And then the third act, which is, having the baby and the baby being there and
pretty big.
dealing with that. And then we won't get into the next. That'll be a Broadway show for next time.
Yeah. I mean, so let me ask you. I have kids. You don't.
I know. Congratulations. They are so cute.
Thank you. It's it's a lot. But what are your feelings about pregnancy, children?
Oh,
like,
God.
what do you think? What do you think in your head kind of
My
happens?
pretty little brain.
Yes, exactly.
I mean, that's honestly a very loaded question because it is very. I have so many feelings towards it.
Really?
I have so many intermingling thoughts into pregnancy and children in general.
Yeah.
And it might just be because, no, actually, this isn't the way because I know a lot of people who are my age who don't think like me, but I do not know if I ever want to have children. And I've always been like this. When people were playing with baby dolls, I was, playing with Barbies. I wanted to be an adult woman so badly. And I liked animals. Like, there was just that true difference.
Yeah.
And so that's obviously come with me into my adulthood.
Yeah.
And I don't, like, I look at a baby, my boyfriend's, brother has children. They're sweet. They're not babies anymore. They're like children, but they're so sweet and I love them so much. And I know a lot of other kids that I love. I was a camp counselor. Like, I really love kids.
Yeah.
To have my own and to be responsible for this thing and to just know what kind of a world I'm bringing it into is a huge weight that I feel. Yeah,
I mean, I get that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's rough. I mean, that's not a good thing. I mean, I'm not sure that you can spend all that much time thinking about that, but I do understand what you're saying. And it's interesting you say that to me, that you have always thought, I don't want kids. Because I've got a lot of friends who, my friends who haven't had children, and they've said to me, like, quite a young age, I never wanted children, and they didn't have children, they didn't want them. And quite frankly, if you don't want them, then you really shouldn't have them because it's a huge thing.
100%.
It's not good for anybody. But I'm sort of curious as to, is that a feeling that you have from you? Is it because, is it pressure from society? Is it like your friends? Like, what do you think that is?
Yeah, I don't know. Like like all of my friends, like I know acquaintances who have had children. None of my close-knit group of friends have a family yet, or they're not even married. Like they don't have kids yet.
20s.
They're late 20s. Yeah. So we don't have kids yet. So there's no kids in the group even. We all have, most of us have dogs and we all take care of those and, you know, whatever. But
That's
it's a start. Yeah, exactly. And I mean, most of us are in, you know, somewhat serious relationships and are dealing with that. But none of us have made it to that kid period yet. And I do know that most of my friends want kids. I'm one of the kind of odd ones out that are like, I actually don't know if I do. And there's that hard thing where it's like, my boyfriend is so sweet and I know he'd be a great dad. He's not ever like, I want kids, we're going to have these kids. He's like, you know, if it's something that you want to do, if we're ready for it and the time is right, we'll do it. But like, it's like, I want to, like, if I'm going to have kids, I want his kids because he's so great. But he's very nice. He's literally wonderful. But yeah, there's that thing of just like, I don't know if I actually want to do that and go through the huge, it's just you're changing your entire life, right? This isn't just for 18 years. This is your entire life. You're changing. You're changing your entire body as a woman, right? Like we're talking about the whole thing. It's really crazy.
You're changing. I mean, I think it's a very interesting question. I mean, on a personal level for me, I always knew I wanted children.
Right.
And I, as we sort of covered in an earlier episode, I had a very challenging, not particularly stable childhood.
Yeah.
So I think for me, I always wanted children, but I always felt in some way that I definitely wanted to raise my children very differently. And I sort of felt, well, I've been shown this example of how not to do it. And I'm definitely not going to do it like that. But I just knew. And then I happened to meet a man who wanted children. And I think for either of us, if we hadn't wanted children, it would have been a bit of a deal breaker.
Yeah.
And we made that pretty clear early on. But it's a massive thing. But it's one of those things that until you have kids, and it's sort of incredibly patronizing thing to say, and people say it to people who don't have kids, and it's very annoying. But it's like, until you've had kids, it's like, until you've done anything in life, it's very hard to know exactly what that entails. So you have this sort of idea, and I think anybody who wants a child is like, you know, oh, beautiful, bouncing, chubby, lovely baby.
Adorable,
blah, blah, blah.
yeah.
They're adorable, lovely, and it's your baby, and blah, blah, blah. And then you get pregnant. And I think you also have this vision that being pregnant, you're going to, I don't know, you sort of have this romantic vision that you're going to be wearing these sort of floral dresses and
you're going to be
through the meadows.
What are they called? Barefoot and pregnant or whatever, right?
And you'll be wearing this lovely, and you'll be this sort of big bosom, floral dressed, beautiful woman running through the meadows. That does sound
excellent.
I've no
idea.
If
that's what it was.
I mean, I've completely made that shit up. But anyway, it's like you have this vision of it being, you are literally going to glow and you're going to blossom and you're going to bloom and you're going to look amazing and
like a peony. Like a peony.
Whatever it is,
lovely.
None of that shit happened for me. It was the complete opposite.
Oh, fuck.
I got pregnant very quickly, and I laugh about the fact. It's slightly terrifying.
Can I know, were you on birth control and then you went off it and then you got pregnant right away?
Yeah.
Amazing.
I mean, we planned it. I mean, we literally kind of
Well, you had obviously just got married.
And I was young when I got married. I was 28. My husband was 27.
Yeah.
Which was a lot earlier than I thought. And then I had this idea in my head. I don't know, you have these sort of like, okay, we have to be married for a bit. And I remember when I got married, a great aunt of my husband's came up to me at I think it was the engagement party, and said, you don't do anything, don't have babies yet. Like, have some time as a couple and be together and then have children. I think that was actually pretty good advice. And we did, and we waited. I don't know if I'd wait that long, but we waited 3 years anyway. And I think the other thing is, when you're young, you're waiting for this. We're going to be financially stable, and we're going to have the right house, and everything's going to be perfect, and I'm going to have my baby. And of course, that's ridiculous because, you know, you're in your 20s or 30s. It's not going to be perfect. And quite frankly, you know, probably financially, it's not going to be perfect until you're in your 40s and 50s, and then your kids are in their teens. You know, it's kind of a weird thing. And I was 31 when my first child was born. And it was quite strange because at the time, you think, well, 31, that's kind of normal. And I remember going to the doctor and they're like, oh, you're very young, aren't you? And I thought, What do you mean I'm young? I'm 31. But actually, most of my friends were a lot older than me.
Wow.
But yeah, we decided I'm going to have a baby. Came off birth control, and I was pregnant.
Wow.
I mean, very quickly. And I had this weird thing, and it was subsequently, like I said, always do some research, everyone. I didn't think I was pregnant, and then I had some blood, and I thought, oh well, I'm not pregnant.
A little spotting.
Yeah, and I thought, oh well, that's a period or whatever around the time. Then I found out that actually that is not the case, and it was literally a little bit of spotting, but I was literally pregnant, sort of like
a
first
month
or second go sort of thing.
Wow.
I mean, it was very easy. And it was good, but it was slightly terrifying to think, shit, get out of free jail card. All those times when you were younger, shit, I could have got pregnant. But when you didn't want to be pregnant. But I got pregnant quite easily. And, my husband was a quite heavy smoker. So he stopped smoking as well. So we kind of prepared it. Got pregnant quite easily. And I literally felt sick from day one.
Oh my God, that's horrible.
And they talk about morning sickness, and I literally felt like I was on a boat. I mean,
just like motion sickness.
Yeah,
just
it's like very severe, and then you can't. And I'm obviously, as everyone knows, I'm English, and so I love my cups of tea, and I probably have about 6 a day.
Yeah,
I mean, I have 3 before 7 o'clock in the morning.
Yes,
Suzie knows. And I was like, and you're not supposed to drink a lot of tea or coffee or whatever.
No caffeine.
Yeah, but even like, well, I guess tea has tannin, but it was like, don't drink tea. And I was just like, I don't
Fuck
want tea.
off.
Don't touch me with tea. And I was like, oh my God, there's something seriously wrong.
Wow.
And then the other thing, I was like, I love salad. I eat a lot of salad. And I was like, don't show me a bowl of salad. It was very, very weird.
What were your actual cravings?
Well, I was
did you want to eat?
Furnace. I was so hot. Wow. I mean, my internal temperature must have been about 1 billion degrees, like the core of the earth.
Was this both pregnancies? We're just talking about the first one.
No, I mean, the second one was probably worse.
Wow.
But along the same kind of thing. But I was really, really hot. And so I had to have, as we call them in England, lollies, which is a popsicle.
Oh, lollies.
And I had to have, like, boxes of lollies a day. It was terrible. And I just had these very odd cravings. And it was funny because I don't eat a lot of dairy, and I hadn't been eating dairy, and all I wanted to eat was cheese. It was so bizarre. And it's very strange. And then I think that idea that you think, oh my God, I'm going to look amazing, and I'm going to, like I said,
you're going to glow.
None of those things happened to me. I think I had every hormonal. I had spots. I had pains. I just looked, because I'm very short, I just looked like
oh God, that's going to be me.
Ginormous boobs, no space, and then this enormous stomach. So I was sort of like I don't know, some kind of caricature. That's what I looked like. And if you sort of tip me over,
my God, I bet you were beautiful. I bet you're more beautiful than you thought.
No, I doubt that. I really don't think that at all. And the birth was
horrendous.
Yeah, I think I mean, and I really would love to hear anybody's stories, and I empathise greatly. And please let us know. But it was terrible. I had my first child in England, and so I was in the NHS, which is sort of like the equivalent of OHIP. So state healthcare, but, it's very good, and it's all free, which, is amazing. And the care was incredible. But I had this whole ridiculous lead up. Do you want to know the ridiculous lead up?
Yeah, of course I do.
Okay, so we just renovated our house. And we're very proud of our house. And it was this small house, but that's relevant.
In England.
In England, yeah. And we just had the bathroom done. And I started having contractions at about 5 a.m. So my husband got up. He's like, okay, what can I do? And I said, okay, I want to have a bath because I want to be clean. I'm like an obsessive. I have to be clean. I never go anywhere without having a shower. It's like my thing. And
did your water break at this point?
No.
Okay.
That's a whole different story.
Oh, Jesus.
So it's like, I have to have a bath and I have to have a cup of tea. He said, great, I'll run you a bath. And our bathroom was above the kitchen. I'll go downstairs and make you a cup of tea. It's 5 a.m. Great. So he goes down, puts the bath on, goes to make a cup of tea. He puts the kettle on. And he's standing there and he's going, why is the bath coming through the ceiling of the kitchen?
Pardon?
Yeah. So I'm sitting, and then my contractions are ramping up.
Are you in the
up.
bath and the bath comes through the kitchen?
No. Thank fuck I wasn't in the bath. I was downstairs on a ball. Like, you have all these, when you have your first pregnancy, you buy all this like paraphernalia and kit because you think it's all very complicated. And I have, one of those like gym ball things.
Yeah.
So I was on this ball going, because as the contractions go, they get worse and
Oh
worse.
my God.
And somebody tried to ask me, like, explain what they're like. And I said, well, imagine somebody puts like a great big sort of crank vice thing, like you're doing woodwork, up your vagina.
Fuck.
And goes, and that's basically it. And you know the size of your vagina hole.
That's small.
And you've
I have a
seen
tiny little
babies.
vagina.
So you think that person is coming through that hole.
No, I don't want
So it has to, of a period of time, get to a size where that baby's coming out. The whole concept is completely terrifying.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I'm on this ball and every, like, bouncing up and down. And Max is like, don't think you can have the bath or the cup of tea because the ceiling's coming through the kitchen. And this is by now 5:30, 5:45 in the morning. So my husband is a lawyer, which is very useful in these situations.
Holy shit.
Calls up the contractor. I've never heard so much swearing in my entire life. You get your effing ass down here. And of course, he has a Canadian accent and all his builders are English, so they're just completely terrified and they know he's a lawyer and and literally this first time in history, these contractors turn up at 6 a.m. and we have a tiny house and I'm going on this ball. And these men, these big sort of contract men pile into this house and they couldn't even catch my get because they've all got children. They're just like, the shame of it that they've done this to this woman. She's having a fucking baby.
You
and they built a
motherfuckers.
bathroom that's coming through her kitchen.
Oh my God.
And it was hideous. And then we had to arrange for one of my relatives to, because then in England what happens is you have to call the hospital. And you call them up and say, I'm having contractions. And then you have this conversation over the phone. And they say, well, how many minutes apart?
Right.
And when they're so many minutes apart, then you come in.
Right. Okay. Wow. So they don't even tell you to come in at a certain point.
No, exactly.
Oh, that's smart.
But you know which hospital you're going to because the way the care works is that you've been followed by a midwife. And it's all midwifery led. So you've been followed by a midwife. You see her every week or whatever. So you know where you're going. You know what you're doing. It's all pretty organised. And then when the moment comes, you call that hospital and then they sort of talk to you over the phone and tell you, okay, how are you doing? And they know by your breathing where you are. Mm. And of course, the way it works in England is you go to a hospital that's close to your house. So you get in the car, you're going to get there most of the time. Anyway, these guys come in, don't look at me, and I'm going, and the pains are getting more and more. And of course, I haven't had a bath. I haven't had a cup of tea.
Yeah, you're fucking pissed.
I am the cranky witch from hell who's about to have a baby. And to me, the idea of going somewhere I haven't had a bath or a shower, it's just beyond horrendous. I can't even fathom how awful this is. Anyway, I obviously have to get in a car and go to hospital, and I do. Get to hospital, and they're super into sort of at the time they were very into sort of natural, have the baby naturally and all this.
Like no epidurals.
No drugs.
Okay, yeah.
So, and I was in what we call a NHS hospital, and I got my own room, which I know will probably surprise people, but I wasn't on a ward. I was in my own room with a bathroom, and I didn't pay for this; it's all free. And they're like, come in and blah blah blah, and I'm like, drug. They're like, no, you don't need drugs. I'm like, I think I do need.
Give me my fucking drugs.
Exactly. And they're like, no, blah blah. And I was there for so long, and then they put me in a bath. I'm in the bath, and it just gets worse and worse and worse. And so you talk about this idea, like you see in the movies, of your waters breaking. You've probably seen that many times. Well, my waters, this is hours in, and they're not broken.
Oh my
so
God.
I'm like, and I'm doing gas and air, which is hilarious. Like you have this sort of looks a bit like an oxygen tank, and you breathe it in, and then you feel a bit better. It really doesn't help that much. And then the pain's getting worse, and then they're starting to think this isn't a very good situation. So I'd been there,
and you're like, no shit,
no
fucking shit. It's not a good situation.
I've been there for a very long time, and then they're like, okay, we need to do something. So essentially, and it was a man. who was a obstetrician. I'd had, like, by this time about 6 different midwives. And, you know, by this time...
Like coming off shift.
Exactly.
Oh, my God.
Your dignity is gone. And I'd said before, thank God, I'd said to my husband, I've no idea where I thought this. I've got to get everything waxed down below. I've got a pedicure. I've got to get the whole thing done. I don't know why I thought that. And he thought I was mad.
Yeah.
And then when about literally 1 million people had seen up my vagina, he's like, oh, I get it.
Yeah.
I really get it.
Oh, my God.
And by this point, I'm like not doing very well. And then I was like, get my husband. He's got to be here. I don't want him to see down there because, you know, your stuff's coming out. It's not romantic. It's not, he may see you in a very different light after he's seen all that.
Yeah.
And anyway, so this man comes along and literally sticks his hand up me and bursts my waters.
Oh, my God.
Mm-hmm. And then this, like you see in the movies, like you see the water, the pain I will never experience in my life again was indescribable. It was just horrendous. And I grabbed my husband's hand and my nails went in and I was like, find the fucking man with the drugs right fucking now.
Yeah.
You know, kind of thing. Excuse the shouting. And
yeah. I think you're allowed to shout.
And basically they were all a bit like, okay. I said, I just find him. And they found him and he was a man. Sorry that he was a man. And I had an epidural, and the way it works, well, at that time in England, is you push for a certain amount of time. They can't let you push forever. And so I think...
No, you shouldn't, because that can really fuck you up.
Yeah. Yeah, so in that hospital, I think it was an hour and a half. In different hospitals, it's different all over.
Oh, wow,
yeah.
I didn't know that.
So they let me push, and then, like, this isn't happening, and they sort of got these sort of things that look like salad tongs and try to sort of push around.
Fuck, you're really, not a salad.
It's really horrible. And they're like, this isn't happening, and at a certain point, they start to look very worried. And, of course,
you can see their fucking faces. You're like...
because you've had the epidural.
Right.
And literally, when you have the epidural, you can't feel anything. So when they say push, you're like, but you have no idea what's going on. So it's a very odd thing. And then like, okay, you have to have a cesarean. This is really not very good. So they wheeled me in, and this was very late now. And I'd started at 5, so this was late in the evening. And they wheeled me in, and it was not a good situation. And I lost a lot of blood, and it wasn't a brilliant thing. It was not good. And my baby was born, and they literally sort of shoved it into Max's hand and shoved him into the hallway and didn't tell him anything, because that's the doctor's way of just like, get out, you've got to save this woman's life and like get out of the way. And they can't tell the relative, because obviously the relative's going to go nuts. Mm-hmm. And obviously I was fine because I'm here. And, but it wasn't fun. And it's very painful because you've pushed. And so I actually, to this day, feel it's a bit damaged, but because you push very hard, and then you, I don't quite have the same, it's different down there. I don't have a lot of women, and that is an issue in their relationships.
Yeah.
When you have children, it does change things, because some people, it can tear and stuff, and I don't have that. But I had this cesarean, and then, you know, you have this baby and this thing you've been dreaming of, this beautiful thing. And it is a very intense emotional thing. And I woke up the next day, basically, or not the next day, I suppose that late in the middle of the night, probably. And you have this baby, and, you know, I was sort of on I was very drugged up and stuff. But once you sort of are cognizant of the fact you have this baby, it's very intense. The emotions are unbelievable. But then the sort of reality, and then you have to start trying to breastfeed. And for me, because I'd had an emergency cesarean, it just wouldn't work. And it just didn't work. And I was in hospital for a week. And it was quite tough, because there was a lot of pressure to feed this baby naturally and all the rest of it. And my baby was quite big, and she was losing weight and all the rest of it. But I think the thing is as women, we sort of have this idea in our head. Mm-hmm. And of course it doesn't necessarily go to plan. And then just the reality of having a baby, which is a huge thing. Physically, just having the baby, like your body goes through all this stuff, and then you have to feed this baby. And even that, like, you think, breastfeeding. I think we're sort of fed this thing that it works for everyone and it's brilliant and it's natural. And actually, a lot of women find it incredibly painful. I mean, I could literally feel it from my nipple down to my toe. It hurt so much, and I just kept going. But it was really uncomfortable. And I've spoken to a lot of other women who've had the same thing. And then, of course, there are many women who don't have it, so they don't know what you're talking about. And then, of course, you've gone through this whole experience, even if it's like mine, where it wasn't a great natural situation, or you've had a baby naturally, your body's gone through this whole thing, and then you're supposed to just go home and just kind of know what to do.
Right.
And then just off you go.
Yeah.
And I remember the drive home from the hospital was probably the most terrifying drive of our life, and Max drove at about 10 miles an hour.
Yeah.
Because you've got this tiny little thing, and you've just bought this car seat, and you have no idea what you're doing. And the thing, you know, I would commend the NHS, and I don't know exactly what happens here in Canada, but when you go home for a certain period of time, a health worker basically comes and visits you and checks on you.
Oh, that's very nice.
They check the baby, they weigh the baby, they also check on your mental health, on whether you're having issues, and they do it very subtly because they ask you certain questions, and it's obviously to see if you are suffering from postpartum depression.
I was just going to ask, is that like even the breastfeeding thing? Do you think that's anything to do with postpartum depression?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think that your body is going through this massive shift.
Yeah.
And the hormones change. I think it's sort of quite quickly after birth. And we're just going through this wild thing. And I think the other issue is for women who experience extreme postpartum depression is everyone builds up this thing. You've had a baby, and especially if you've been wanting this child, you feel that you should be elated. You should feel all these feelings, and it should all be natural and normal. And of course, it isn't always the case. And then you feel terrible guilt.
Yeah.
Now, in my case, just because I couldn't feed my baby naturally, I was in hospital for a week. I literally had a moment. It was probably about 10 minutes, I'd say, when one midwife came in and she was just pressurizing me, and it was just too much. And I hadn't had any sleep, and I just burst into tears, and I cried, and then that was it, and that was done, and then was fine.
What kind of questions are they asking you? You said they ask questions when they come to the home.
They had a questionnaire.
Yeah.
And I can't really remember. They just sort of go through questions, and the questions will help them to understand if there's something wrong in terms of your mental health, your mental state. And, you know, obviously I had that, Alexa, that was, you know, 18 years ago in November. So that was a long time ago. So, but it was a very good system. And then what happens is you kind of have a local clinic that you can go to every week. And then there are midwives there, and you can ask them questions. So it's very, very geared up, the system in England, for mothers and getting help and stuff like that. That doesn't mean a lot of people aren't suffering, because I think the whole thing is just such a huge thing. And I think for modern women, we're told we're these career women, and we go out, we've got to, you know, sort of be supremely successful in the career. And then all of a sudden you have this baby, and then it's just like, oh, well, this is very different. And it's a real sort of shift.
Yeah.
And then, of course, emotionally, well, the way you feel in your body, you have no idea how you're going to feel. You think you know you're going to have.
Yeah.
But you don't know how you're going to feel. And it's a big, big change.
Yeah, it's crazy. And I think, I mean, because our sex education is not what it should be.
Yeah.
How are you supposed to know what actually happens in the birthing room, right? Like, how are you actually supposed to know what happens during pregnancy?
I don't think they can. I think that's very difficult because you're so young. Personally, I think what would have been really helpful for me, because I went to a very feminist school, and it was all about you're a woman and you can do anything and you can rule the world, and that's the kind of education I had.
Wow.
And I went to a girls' school, and it was very, you can do anything, you can be anybody, and blah blah blah. And that's absolutely true. But it might have been helpful if they'd said, well, and when you have a baby, it's kind of, you might need some time off, or you might need this, or you might need a partner who helps you. And again, I mean, how do they say that to you when you're 18? I don't know how they say that to you. It's pretty difficult. But I think it might be helpful if they maybe presented having a child or having to take time off, or because even if you take only a year off or 6 months off, you have got to take some time off. I was working for myself, so I literally took very little time off. But you literally, whatever it is, whether you're taking time off or changing your schedule, you have to do that. And that, I think that was kind of like quite a big shock. And
Taking the time off? Or
well, not for me. I didn't really take time off.
Yeah,
because I had
exactly.
my own business, I really couldn't, but I had to work around. And I think I guess it's a shock as to how much, I mean, the baby needs you all the time. And I don't think there's any way of knowing that until you have a child. And it's all consuming. It really is.
Yeah.
And it starts at 6 a.m. and finishes, it just goes continuously. And when children are very young, it's very physical. You're always, you're feeding them or bathing them or doing something. It's all the time, all the time, all the time, all the time. And when my oldest daughter was young, I didn't have, support of my mum, or I didn't have help from anybody else. I couldn't really afford it. And it's a lot, But how can we help women? I don't know. I mean, I think part of it would be educating men.
Yeah.
I did this.
Great point. That's also part of them, huh?
Yeah. Yeah. That, this is your child too.
Yeah.
I mean, I definitely think the bond between a mother and a child.
It doesn't just happen with a woman.
Yeah. You're both there.
Yeah. You need a man to have a baby.
And whatever that support is, whether that support is the man says, okay, I'm going to be here for you and you need to take time off, or whatever it is, or it's whatever that support takes, that's really up to you as a couple. But I really think educating men that this is an enormous thing, having a child. You go through hormone, like everything in you. It's like metaphysical. It just changes. Your mind, everything. What you think you are going to feel is never the same,
Right.
So it's a big thing. And I think that would be probably the most helpful thing in sex education, to sort of be a bit more informative about families and that men are part of this, or the partner, whoever the partner is.
Yeah.
Whether that is a man or a woman or whoever your partner is. The person physically having the child, and the person supporting the person who's having a child, that would be really helpful. There's a bit more education around that, I think.
Yeah.
Really do.
And then because because none of us are getting the education we deserve or need for it. So, there should be better programs with maybe the doctors, right? And just preparing them, because these are adults now. Maybe you have sex education when you're in high school and junior high or whatever that is. But these are adults now. They should have real sense of what's going to be happening. And I don't think that's happening, right?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know exactly what happens here. I mean, I know like in the States they have Lamaze or whatever, and in England they have a thing called the NCT, which is a charity, and women's and men, and it is very much about the couple, and in those days it was very much about a male and a female,
right?
A heterosexual couple, but you go and it's a way of meeting other people who are having a baby, and they sort of teach you, sort of go through some things, and it's sort of useful, but it's not run by the government. It's run by a charity.
Right.
And you kind of have to, I was going so many years ago, I suppose you have to pay for it. And I'm sure there's a similar thing here. But in terms of, in terms of the government, I don't know. And I think the thing about having children is there are so many challenges today. I mean, it's like, where are you going to live? In terms of how much space you have, especially in a city like Toronto or London or New York or Chicago, whatever. Where are you going to live? I mean, the space you need, and then the sort of worry about, well, that space will be for this long and so on.
Yeah.
And I think the real reality for most couples is that somebody has to take some time off. And how are you going to do that? You need money. And the world is getting more and more expensive, and I won't sugarcoat it. It's pretty terrifying, actually. Yeah. But But for me, having children, I had two. I have two girls. It's, you know, the greatest joy of my life. It's the pride and joy of my life. And, you know, they're what matters. But it's not easy. And definitely for women, and that's for another podcast, how you deal with this, how you manage all of those things is incredibly difficult, because society's telling us that we can have it all. You can have a career and you can have children and you can be married to an amazing man and, you know, and all these things, or have an amazing partner, whoever your partner is, and it's all going to be fabulous. And that's actually not true, is it?
No.
It's incredibly difficult.
How are you able to have it all when you can barely have some of it?
Yeah.
And enjoy that you're trying to enjoy. Yeah.
Definitely. And then, like we said, and then trying to have a life and trying to be happy. And if you're a couple, trying to have an amorous life. And how the hell are you supposed to do that?
Yeah. I mean, I've honestly heard that, you know, having a child is actually very lonely.
It can be, yeah.
Yeah, obviously it can be, right? So it, like, not everyone's pregnancy or having that child is lonely, but if you don't have that right support system, if you don't have the friends who also have children or want to hang out with you when you have a baby, or have that man or partner with you who wants to actually be present or have the family support, it's an extremely lonely thing. And how are you supposed to help yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think particularly if we think about, you know, modern women, like, you know, you've been in the workplace, you've had all these, you know, you're very good at your job, all these people respecting you, you interact with adults, and then you have a baby, and a baby, it's not the same, right? You know, it's, and even to a very young child, it's different, but that switch is incredibly difficult. And I think, you know, from my experience and from a lot of my friends, that's why I say it's very interesting when you say I kind of always felt a bit different about it.
Yeah.
Is I have friends of mine who are really maternal, like innately maternal.
Yeah.
And I'd say I'm innately maternal. It just comes to me very naturally. I just sort of, I can't really explain it, but I just sort of feel it. Whereas I have friends who it's not. I don't think it is natural. Natural in terms of innate, you know, and they have a lot of guilt about that, and they feel bad about that, and they shouldn't, because what are they supposed to do? Are they supposed to sort of change the way they feel? Because there's so much pressure to sort of be this amazing, you know, mother, and amazing at your job, an amazing wife or partner, and it's a lot of pressure. It's a huge amount.
Yeah, it's hard to deal with, especially just as a woman, as someone who, you know, like you said, had done so much before it, and now your entire life, as we know it, has changed, and you have to be the mother to someone, and that's a crazy change.
You have to be a mother, and you also don't discount. You feel different, you know. However your pregnancy was, I mean, I definitely put on weight because I felt horrendous.
Course.
And then and that's the other thing, is you have a baby and you think, oh, well, obviously the bump, everything goes.
Right, it just pops back in.
And nothing pops back anywhere, Susie. And my boobs, the size, changed about 4 times.
Wow.
And I was this weird anathema, because I heard Selma Hayek say this, that the famous actress. She said, you know, everyone keeps saying to her, oh, your boobs are so big, you've had surgery. And she's like, no, like my boobs got bigger when I had breastfeeding, and then I had the menopause and so on. And I'm like, no, I know she's telling the truth, because that's I had always had big boobs, but then they got bigger and bigger and bigger, and it was like sort of an inflating. I could have like been in a balloon and like flown away. I mean, they just got bigger and bigger and bigger. Whereas a lot of women, they breastfeed and they get smaller. Right. And I was like the reverse. And then with my second child, and it got anyway. But also the way you feel about yourself is not good. You don't feel good, because your body will never be quite the same. And in my case, I had a cesarean, so you have a sort of cut across your stomach, and then so you sort of have this natural layer of flab over there that never goes away, and you feel, I don't know, I suppose you have so much wrapped up before that in the way you are and who you are as a young woman and the way you feel about yourself, and then you just don't feel the same, and it can be quite quite devastating because you're just not prepared for it. You're just not prepared at all. For
what was the? Because I know you had 2 cesareans. Mm-hmm. So what was the What was the biggest differences, I guess, between the first and the second pregnancy and the second birth?
The second birth, I had my second daughter. We were living in Switzerland, which is a very different medical system. And my husband had a corporate job, and with that came medical care. So I had a child in a private hospital, which was like literally night and day. And in Switzerland, it's unbelievable. Right. It's like these beautiful Swiss clinics. They're not kidding. And we lived in a city called Lausanne, which is on a lake, and it's all very beautiful, a little bit sort of fairy tale like. But I just knew, I guess like a woman, I knew my body. I knew that I'd had this horrendous experience. And I also, I'm very short, and I had a very big baby. And even when Alexa was born, they're like, oh, she's pretty big. I was like, what, you didn't know or whatever? I was like, no, she's even bigger than we thought, because they follow you. So they kind of have an idea of how big she's going to be. And she was pretty big. And they're sort of like, and then when I got pregnant with my second child in Switzerland, and it's different in Switzerland. In England, it's midwifery led, so you're followed by a midwife. And only when it gets serious does an obstetrician, does a doctor come in and deal with it. Whereas in Switzerland, it was led by the doctor from the very beginning. Right. Which has its benefits and has its downsides. And when I knew I was pregnant, I just sort of was very nervous going to this appointment. And I just sort of blurted to the doctor, like, I know my body. I know the second baby's going to be bigger. It's not going to come out. I know it's not going to come. I was rambling away. I have to have a cesarean. I don't care. I have to have it. It's just not. And she was amazing. My doctor was a female. She said, I understand. And I looked at medical. I was very lucky. You look at your medical records from England, and then she got them, and she's like, you're absolutely right. Statistically, it's probably extremely unlikely you could have a natural birth. And so I was very, very lucky. I was in an amazing situation with amazing medical care. And honestly, this hospital was like a 5-star hotel. It was just unbelievable. So I had my first baby in the NHS.
So that's the advice here. Have your baby in Switzerland. Have the whole thing going on. Yeah.
I mean, it was amazing. And then even the attitudes towards everything from cesareans to breastfeeding to everything were much more relaxed. But having an elective cesarean was very different to an emergency cesarean. But you're still having your stomach cut. Right. And I remember saying to her, because I'd had my first baby in England, and I had this quite nasty scar. It was sort of like a jaggedy emergency. So bad. Quite big. Well, big, but sort of like that above my stomach. But sort of 2 inches and sort of a bit ugly. And there I am in Switzerland. I said to this private doctor, and unfortunately, money talks in this situation. And I said, do you think you could straighten that out?
Right.
Do you think you could do something?
Little battle scars.
And I have this amazing, she straightened it out, and now it's probably an inch.
Wow.
Which is quite amazing that a baby came out of that.
Right.
And my baby,
I mean, it's just like your
my
vagina,
second baby
though.
was even bigger. Yeah, exactly. Was even bigger. But the nicest thing, and I will remember this till the end of my days, is, that I had the baby, and you're a bit gaga, you've gone through this, and you've had all these drugs in you and whatever, and you've had the baby. And she came to me that night, because I had the baby at like 7:00 in the morning. And the doctor came to me in the evening and said, and I'll never forget this, you're a woman. You knew your body. You were right. If you had had this baby at term, which would have been another 10 days, given your height, you're 5 foot, 5'1", 5 foot, very small, is your baby would have been over 9 pounds, probably 9 pounds something. There is no way you would have had this baby naturally. It couldn't physically have happened. So you were right, and you knew in yourself. And it was, I think that's probably the most amazing experience I've ever had with the doctor. I was just like, wow. It was unbelievable. Unbelievable.
It's crazy.
Yeah. It's so interesting and we've talked about this in other episodes, where you have a negative experience with a doctor. When you have a positive experience like that, what it does to you, the way it makes you feel, the way it puts you on a path, is sort of indescribable to me. I can't tell you. It made me feel like a bajillion times better.
Right.
And I wasn't, in a great state. I had, I had a lot of weight to lose, and I had physically had a difficult pregnancy and had felt very sick for most of it, and refused to take medication and stuff like that. But it helped me so much. It was amazing. Really, really amazing. So
yeah, I mean, it's so crazy. Like, and I mean, obviously, you speaking about this is really obviously making me want children even more, Mel. I mean, how could I not want to go through all those amazing times?
I know, but I'm giving you
100%, and obviously we all appreciate that. There is that thing of like, this is not an easy thing to do. Like,
of course not.
Let's stop pretending like it's just the most natural, beautiful thing in the world.
Yeah.
Like, it's extremely fucking hard.
It's very hard.
You can't just pretend that it's going to be okay all the time.
No, and there will be moments, I think any mum will tell you, there'll be moments which are really difficult.
Yeah.
But overall, the only way I can say it to you is they're the biggest joy in my life. And I have 2 teenagers, so I really say
Jesus
that,
Christ.
Teenage years is another whole thing.
Yeah.
But they are my biggest joy. But that doesn't mean, like anything, that there isn't difficult stuff, right? I mean, they say no pain, no gain. I mean, they're not kidding.
Yeah.
But I do think if you don't, or you feel in yourself that you don't want children, and I think there's a huge amount of pressure, and you read a lot of stuff about it, of women, like, what's wrong with you? Why do you not want a child? And it certainly depends on what cultural background you come from, and there can be a huge amount of pressure.
Mm-hmm.
That you have to do what's right for you, and you and your partner, you have to do what's right for you. I mean, that's another whole thing. If one person wants a child and the other person doesn't want a child, that's a whole different thing. But don't let anybody tell you what to do. I mean, it's the same when you have a child. I cannot tell you the amount of stuff, unwanted advice that people give you. And you're just like, go away. Like, I'll do the best I can do, and just go away. And I mean, I think the most disappointing thing to me, and I think disappointing is probably the right word, when I had my children, I've worked the whole time through both my pregnancies and my children, and I'm lucky that I've worked for myself, so I've been able to be very, very flexible. But the criticism I've received from other women, or the judgment, has been, that's, I think, the thing that shocked me the most. I just couldn't believe it. Rather than, like, support, and I think it's a very unflattering side of being a female, is that we like to sort of bring people down. Like, if somebody else is not doing as well, then we're doing better in some sort of weird, very messed up sense. Mm-hmm. And I think that's hard, because we talk today about, like, female empowerment and women supporting each other and blah, blah, blah. And that doesn't always happen. And I think
most of the time it actually does not happen. No. We love to pretend it doesn't go that way.
And masses of judgment. So, if you have your children and you're not working, you get judged. If you do work, you get judged. If you work part-time, you get judged. And you're like, how about everyone go off into your thing? You do what's right for you. You do what's right for you, the woman, your partner, your family unit, your child. That's it. That's the end of it. I mean, you do what's right for your unit and all the people in that unit, whomever those people are, and that's it. And it has absolutely nothing to do with anybody else.
100%.
None of their business. And that's what I truly believe, and I've done that. I've done what's best for myself, my husband, my family, my children. But you get a lot of stick for it. You really do. And that's not right. That's and I don't know why. I don't know why that's the case.
Yeah, it's hard to tell. I mean, I think women, we can get to this. This discussion is a whole other discussion, right? Of just like, mostly it's women on women hate more than, men on women hate a lot of the time when it's a social thing, right? Like where women are trying to judge other women, and like it's extremely hard to sometimes be a friend of a woman if you can feel that hard tension of that, whether it's jealousy or whatnot, or and obviously men are clueless, so it's not like they're doing that kind of same thing, but it's that very hard thing where we all actually do want to be friendly and love each other, and it's just not the reality, obviously.
No, and it can be very, very difficult. I think it's a hard lesson, that's for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. But, I mean, Suzie, we could talk about this forever.
I know, and this is an extremely, extremely interesting story for myself, because being a woman who doesn't know if she wants a baby, and obviously this conversation is not going to change my mind, and it won't change any of our audience members' minds of if they want to have children or not. We know that these are the risks of having a baby. We should be knowing, we should know this, right? Like this isn't a surprise. It's an extreme medical, procedure, if you want to call it that. Like it's not an easy thing to do. So it's having babies is the most beautiful thing in the world when you have them.
It is, yeah.
And it's just a completely new experience.
It is, but it's bringing a life into the world, and that's a big responsibility.
Doesn't come without pain.
Yeah, exactly. And for me, it's what I wanted. So the pain, kind of, I've told you my story, but it just it's gone away. I don't think about it. I don't.
Right. I've heard that that's a hormonal thing. Like there's a chemical in a woman's brain after they have birth, where you not forget the pain, because obviously I'm sure you still remember, but you don't remember it in the same intense way, so that you have more children.
I think you basically, the love for your child it's unbelievable. This feeling is just
overwhelming,
incredibly intense, and so you just kind of, I don't know, it just goes somewhere. You just forget about it, and then you do it again and again and again in many cases.
Yeah, these women who have 10 children.
I never ever wanted that. I mean, I thought about 3, but like beyond that, I was just like, no, thanks.
That's so funny.
But I mean, women who have 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 kids, like, I take my hat off. I really,
right,
fuck
that,
unbelievable. But
what that vagina can do, honestly, what she can do, it's incredible. It truly is.
Yeah, and we're talking about me and my situation and modern science. And if it hadn't been, I would, sort of decades ago, I'd be dead. And so you think about women 100 years ago, sort of having babies in fields and sort of having this baby, and out it comes, and then going back to work, and just like, it's mind blowing. And I think that is something to be said about women, is just their capacity for pain is unbelievable.
Yeah.
Because if a man, honest to God, and I don't say this in a sort of anti-male way, but if men had to have babies, there would not be another baby walking the earth. I mean,
there'd be no population.
There'd be you, me, and somebody else.
Yeah.
I mean, there'd be nobody, because they, you've seen all those things where they get those sort of little machines and put those little on men and sort of try and emulate an actual contraction, and they can't even cope after about 10 seconds. And you're like, how about...
And I've seen them put it on a woman.
Yeah.
The same amount.
Yeah.
They'll show you it's the same.
Yeah. And she's like...
And she's literally like, are you serious?
I haven't started yet.
Yeah.
yeah.
It's like the amount of pain that we actually deal with month to month.
Yeah, exactly.
Not even childbirth.
I mean, exactly.
It's unbelievable.
So that is a wonderful and seriously beautiful thing. But it is a big thing.
Yeah.
It's not
light.
It's a big thing bringing that into the world. I mean, I wouldn't worry. I don't think you can get too kind of bogged down and depressed with like bringing it into the world that we live in, because the world we live in is, quite frankly, beyond depressing. It's horrendous. So, I mean, if you worried about that, you really wouldn't, nothing would happen. It's awful. So you have to think about you and your family and your unit and what you want and so on. But it is a big thing. It's a seriously big thing. It's going to change your life. It'll change everything. And people say, oh, yeah, I'm just going to have a baby and the baby's going to fit into my life. And you're
like, yeah, fuck, yeah.
Absolutely hilarious. It's like,
yeah, sure.
Yeah, so how's that going to work?
It's not a dog. You can't just like,
no.
yeah.
It's like, no, that doesn't work. And
Yeah.
good luck with that.
Yeah.
You've had 2 hours sleep, but yeah, okay. But, no, I mean, you could talk about it forever, but I think...
No, and I really appreciate you sharing your story. I think it's not an easy thing to talk about because it is traumatic a bit. Obviously, you've gotten through it and you have these beautiful children. It's not like anyone died or anything like that from it, thank God. But yeah, no, it is an amazing thing what women can do with their bodies. It's unbelievable. So I do appreciate you sharing your story with us.
Astounding, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, as usual, Susie, it's been fantastic to chat, and I hope by sharing, our story and me telling you my experience, and you haven't had kids yet, that maybe listen, but they get some. Okay, that's kind of an interesting perspective.
Absolutely.
And maybe they can go away and think about what they want to do, and but it is I would reiterate, completely individual choice.
Absolutely.
And you should do it because you want it.
Make that choice yourself.
Your partnership with your partner, you want it because it's big.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, thank you, Mel. This was an amazing talk, as always. And we appreciate you sharing your stories with us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Love you, Mel.
I love you too, Sis.
Bye,
And we'll
guys.
see you all next time.
See you next time, guys. Love ya.
Thanks so much for listening. Please rate and review this podcast and follow us on social at Sharing My Truth Pod, and leave us a voicemail on our website at sharingmytruth.com to share your stories and experiences with us. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.